Hi, my name is Andrew McDermott, and this is the Champions Mindset Podcast. Join me as I dive into the minds of the world's greatest champions and share with you the secrets, lessons, and knowledge that's allowed them to rise to the top. Welcome to our community of greatness, abundance, and fortitude. Thank you so much for being here. It's time to become the person you've always wanted to be. This is episode 8 of the Champions Mindset Podcast presented by First Finisher. It's been almost a month now since I've done a show, and I apologize for the brief hiatus, but I promise you what I have in store is going to be well worth the wait. I'm not just talking about today's show. In addition to the interview-style show I've done so far, where I interview different guests, I'm going to be introducing a weekly episode of the Champions Mindset Podcast that is completely different. And really unlike any other podcast in this self-improvement, self-optimization, whatever you want to call it, industry. I'm super excited about this. I have all the details for you sometime next week. You definitely do not want to miss it, so keep an eye on your podcast feed by subscribing to the show on iTunes. Also, to make sure you never miss an update regarding the Champions Mindset Podcast, head over to www.firstfinisher.com and sign up for our newsletter. So let's get into today's show. I interviewed Dr. Gary Williams, who is the athletic director at Wittenburg University in Ohio. And, every show I've done so far has been incredible in each their own way. But today's show is really special to me because Dr. Williams is someone who I am very close with in my life and someone who has been one of the greatest personal influences in my life. Dr. Williams has been a mentor to me in every way imaginable. He's someone I love like family. Just really one of the most genuine and amazing people in my life. I actually first met Dr. Williams when I went to this week-long summer camp called Badger Boys State in Wisconsin, which was this mock government leadership camp. Needless to say, this week was one of the most transformative experiences of my life. I met people that I will be friends with forever, and it sounds cliche, but it was truly life-changing. I viewed my life and what I wanted to do with it and the kind of person I wanted to be. And Dr. Williams was one of my counselors and a speaker at this camp. He was definitely, I took to him more than any of the other counselors who were all amazing, but me and Gary just really clicked. Dr. Williams has his Ph.D. in leadership, and he does many speeches, many talks, and is really at the forefront of leadership research. But so after this week, I really stayed in contact with Gary, and he became a mentor to me. And like I said, in every way possible, in my professional life, in my career, but more so as a man. And the way he teaches leadership, the way he leads, is what makes him so unique and so impactful, I think. And that's why the name of this episode is Learning to Lead Through Love. The status quo in society, we kind of get this message, is that to be a leader, you need to be, especially for men, this rough, tough alpha. What the best leaders do, what true leaders do, is they love the people that they work with, that they coach. Whoever they lead, they love. And obviously, there's different ways to show that. The message behind that is that they care. And so really this episode, it could be called Leadership 101, because everything we get into is amazing. Just some of the things we get into is the difference between being a manager and being a leader. Leading during times of adversity, why leadership takes practice. Meaning leaders aren't born, they're created. You become a leader through how you practice leadership. We talk about great leaders, how great leaders surround themselves with people who make up for their weaknesses. We talk about the biggest myth of leadership. You kind of get the point. We talk about everything leadership, and it's really just an amazing episode. So let's get into the show. I still see them all the time, and I'd met them for a week.
Yeah, well, I think, and that's something that we we lose sight of in the ordinary day. Like, we still have that same opportunity to do that with the people that we surround ourselves with, and yet it's just considered ordinary life to us. And so infrequently, we think about a family setting, right? You see the same people all the time, and you're like, okay, I can almost predict what your mom or dad or brother or sister or grandparent. I mean, those people all tell you what you want. It's almost like you're like, I can predict what they're going to say. I know what they're going to say, and this is one of those times where I really think having a mentor is one of the most critical pieces of leadership. Having somebody who, there's a great book by Heifetz and Lenski called Leadership on the Line. And the reference, it's in like one of the first chapters, but one of the references is the delicate balance of leadership is just like a prom dance. Like, you have to be willing to be on the dance floor, and when you're down on that dance floor and you're kind of doing your thing, you kind of see like 4 or 5 people around you, right? And you kind of bump into people and all, but you really don't see the whole picture, right? And then consider yourself then, if you stand to the outside then and watch the whole thing, you still are only at a certain height, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can see a lot of people, but you're on the same level. And then there's that moment where you sit up on that balcony, like when you really rise up on top of a stage or a balcony, and you really look out and you really see it. And this is the quest of leadership, is the delicate balance between being in the middle of it, being on the side of it, but then also being up above it and seeing the whole picture. And mentors are so critical, and that's why Badger Boys is such an impactful opportunity, because we're telling kids the messages they've heard all their lives. We just happen to package it in a different way. We just happen to present it in a different way, and yet we become people that for many ways become another parent, a big brother, an uncle, somebody that they then all of a sudden look to. And I think this is one of the keys. So whether you listening out there to this podcast are, get an opportunity like Badger Boys State, or go to a leadership conference, or have any of these things, I would tell you one of the most critical pieces of leadership, and one of the best things a leader does for him or herself, is having a mentor, having somebody who's a guide, having somebody who is literally the helping them along the way, and in giving them that view of themselves that's not emotional, that's not personal, but that is impactful and truthful. And that's one of the key pieces
Hey,
is having those people.
yeah, it's amazing that you say that. And every single guest I've had on the podcast so far, no matter what field they're in, whether it's someone talking about being a successful entrepreneur, a successful athlete, they've all said that they have a coach, that they have someone who they still look to. I mean, I had an interview with one of the premier marketing fitness marketers named Bedros Koulian, who charges $30,000 a time for his $30,000 an hour for his time. And he's like, yeah, I still got a coach. I still pay people that kind of money, because you always need to be learning.
Yeah, and that is one of the traps of leadership, is this notion that you're never a finished product. You've got to constantly think of yourself as evolving, and it's the thing I see is the most difficult when I'm observing my coaches, when I'm observing the athletes that I work with, when I observe my colleagues. It's the old, roll out the same syllabus and try to teach the same class again from last year. And this is one of the things that today's student, today's consumer is way too savvy for you to just roll out the same thing you did last year. Like, and I try. I mean, I know it's easier. I get it. It is way easier to try to replicate the same training regimen, to replicate the same 2-a-day practice. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times where people try and try and try to do the same thing again. And what ends up happening is they get so frustrated with the consumer that that's when they become, uh, in terms of they become more management oriented.
Hmm.
They try to fit everyone in a box because it's easier for them. And my thing is every time I do something, it's a new audience. I started in higher education in 1997, so this is uh, almost 20 years now uh, of freshman classes that I've seen in college. And this freshman class, I don't care what anyone says, is different than the last one, than the one before that, than the one before that. Even if the kids are returning from last year, they're different. They went home for the summer. They've evolved. They've changed. They've grown up. So every time I walk in a room, I was giving a speech to a group of RAs today, and I use some of the same stories, of course, that I even use at Badger Boys, but every message I give, I tweak a little bit because they deserve my very best. It may be my 20th time speaking to a group like this, but it's their first time. And if I don't give my very, very best to them, then I failed them. And to me, that's critical. Is I want to get to that point where when I'm done with this journey, you only get one chance on this journey. And when I'm done, I'm going to be tired because I'm going to cash it all in every day. And you're right. It's hard. It's difficult. It's lonely because, like you and I were talking about, there's a lot of things I could be doing at 10 o'clock at night on a Thursday night, as I'm thinking about a million things I need to do. But yet I think I want to learn as much from you as I am about talking to you about what I have to give. And, having an opportunity to spend some time with you, it's like, every one of these opportunities, you've got to take something from it, or why are you doing it? Like, what's your motive then?
Yeah.
It becomes transactional then. And I want transformation. And so, but that's hard. Andrew, there's way more people. There's way too many people that want just a transaction. If I put this in, then I get this. I want it safe. I want a safety network, right? If I go in the weight room and I put in 2 hours, I'm going to get bigger, faster, stronger. Yeah, well, yeah, but I could probably also put in 25 minutes and get as much out of that 25 minutes if I really focus my time and attention. And that's not transactional, that's transformational. And that's the difference. And that's one of the key differences between management and leadership. Is it a transaction, quid pro quo, or is it trying to really make a difference in someone's life?
I've never heard it put that way, but that absolutely makes sense, and it really lays it out in a simple way but still very powerful.
Thanks.
Uh,
You know, it, I wanted to I want to kind of go in a different direction with you, which is, if that's okay with you,
oh
because
yeah, let's do it.
you sent me something. You sent me some questions to think about, and I just you know, and I want to kind of go in. So this summer, has been really difficult for me and for many of the people I've been around. We've had some really significant and tragic events happen. We had a group of student athletes coming home from a concert, and they had been working all weekend, got tired, and got into a horrific car accident, and we lost one of the student athletes. And it was a very innocent, no alcohol, no drugs involved, just tired at the wheel. And he didn't wear a seatbelt, and one of the athletes was killed. And I'm still, at the time that it occurred, you get into this mode, right? And you're in this response mode. And it's only been recently this is like almost 2 months later now, I've had an opportunity to really start reflecting on some of the things that occurred during that period of time. And it's amazing, the adversity that you see people go through during that difficult time, and yet people that I watch, that lead others, lead families, lead organizations, how much in those moments of crisis they need someone that's going to be willing to step up and help make decisions. And that to me has been one of the most telling takeaways from. I don't wish on anyone, don't get me wrong, Andrew, that I don't wish anyone to have to go through those types of traumatic events, but leadership takes practice. And if you don't put yourself out there and you don't put yourself in settings, then you don't know how you're going to react when a tough thing happens. And it builds, right? But everything builds to these crescendos of life when you have one of these most critical moments, and it's never comfortable or when you expect it. It always happens in the most bizarre times and places and catches you off guard. And yet, I can't impress upon you and others enough how important leadership is cognitive. It is a learned trait. I don't let anyone fool you. You're not born a leader. You're born with leadership qualities and characteristics, but you become a leader by what you do. And for me, that's the key, is how do you practice leadership every day? And it starts simply by when you get up in the morning, do you brush your teeth? Do you put 2 feet on the ground? Do you eat breakfast like you're supposed? Like all those little things that we talk about in life. When you're in a setting with with your friends and people are drinking or smoking pot or doing whatever, and like, do you have the courage to stand up and say something to them? It builds and it builds and it builds, and all the little things in life crescendo then when these really tough moments happen. And I hate to tell you, but you're going to do what's wired into your brain. Leadership becomes so much about your brain and your natural reactions. And so, what is the habit of leadership that you have? And if you're disciplined and you're willing to step up and do the right things in the little things, I promise you that in the big things that happen in life, you're going to rise to that occasion as well.
Wow, that's some really powerful stuff, and just a lot going on there. But just, man, I got goosebumps right now just listening to that, and it just can't be enough said. What you're talking about, how leaders are made and not born. I think that's, I mean, obviously you're right, but it's such a misconception that people always think that leaders are born. And growing up, I think that a lot of people become discouraged because they think that, oh, I'm not in this leadership position right away, there's no chance for me.
Yeah, and a lot of that is because of the just the notion of our personalities. Our personalities shape our leadership, and this is something I teach constantly. And I really focus on personality leadership and personality awareness. And almost every slant that I take is on this notion of, well, who's the animal in you? And I use animals, and it's something I learned from a great mentor of mine named Dean Matthews and his leadership program, Character Quest, that I'm a part of. But we took it from a book by Smalley and Trent called The Two Sides of Love. And it doesn't really matter, Andrew. I mean, it can be, some people use the DISC assessment, some people use Myers-Briggs. I mean, colors. I mean, go down the laundry list of stuff, right? I use animals: lions, beavers, otters, golden retrievers, and ultimately the owl. And, lion is your type A, your high task, high speed in decision making. Your beavers are your high task, but they read instruction manuals. They pay attention to details. They like to dot I's and cross T's. Your otters are your playful, high energy, high enthusiasm, relationship based people. They may never show up on time for anything, but they're the life of the party. And golden retrievers are those high relationship based, but very moderately paced relationship leaders. They're the ones who want to give you a hug, who want to be liked, who want to be appreciated. Some call. There's all kinds of ways you can use these animals, but and you're not any one of them. You're somewhere of a cross between two or three of them. And then the owl is the wisest of them all. They're the ones who, there's a great little ditty, a little poem that I learned in 8th grade that's so true. But a wise old owl sits in an oak, and the more he hears, the less he spoke. The less he spoke, the more he heard. Now isn't he a wise old bird? And the owl becomes this collection of the wiseness of of many of these pieces. Now, the catch on this, Andrew, is that there's one of these that's your blind spot, and that's the catch, right? Because in leadership, if you have four personalities of leaders, and and you can kind of master three of the four, well, that's still only 75%. And in any class, that's C. That's why most leaders, honestly, Andrew, are average. They're good. They're good leaders, but they're not great because they can't get through that blind spot. And that's one of the key ingredients in all of this is that's why it's so critical to keep learning and growing and adapting. Now, my blind spot personally is beaver. I'm not a detailed guy. Like, I don't pay attention to that stuff. I never have, probably. And you can say, 42, you're an AD. How can you not be organized? And I'm like, well, I'll tell you. I mean, I am organized when I need to be, but it's just not I prefer that every hour of the hour I'm somewhere doing something and active and engaged, and that's me. And people have to learn to love me and my leadership for what it is, right? And it's not, I don't want someone to judge me, but in the same token, the way you surround yourself with other leaders, completes your blind spot. And that's the key ingredient. So my work study kid, Patrick, my manager of business operations, Leah, they're detail focused people. They control my calendar. They send me emails telling me where I need to go. They dot my I's and cross my T's, and I trust them. I don't ask them to. I appreciate them. I value them. That's the role they play. And Leah, I don't know if she wants to be an AD, but right now this is what the role she has, and she's perfect for that position. But so many people want to surround themselves with people that are just like them because it makes them feel good or it validates their actions.
Yeah,
And
and a lot of times when they're around somebody who is strong in one of your weaknesses, they feel threatened and
absolutely,
let their ego get in the way.
100%, Andrew. And that's the catch, right? The catch is it's not personal; it's purposeful, and make it purposeful. Abe Lincoln's one of the all time greatest leaders. I mean, you can read and read and read about Abe Lincoln, and one of the things he's famously known for is his cabinet, and the people he surrounded himself all thought he was a buffoon. They thought he was an idiot, and yet he put them around him. And I think at some point he's quoted as saying, "Well, why wouldn't I bring them around me? They're the best. They may not like me, or they may not." I'm paraphrasing this, but
Yeah.
they may not like me. They may not think I am worth anything, but they're the best at what they do, and the country deserves the best. So I want them around me because they're going to challenge me. They're going to challenge my ideas because we're going into war. We're going into battle, and I think about that every day. If I'm going to give, I work at a private college where students are going to, doesn't matter what private college, doesn't matter what college. Every student today is, they pay a significant amount of money to get educated,
Yeah.
and I mean, they deserve our very best, and the very best isn't 75%. That's average. And unfortunately, many people are okay with that. And because they have the resources to buy their way out, or becomes transactional to them. And, that's just not me. And I don't need to apologize for the way I lead. But in the same token, so many great leaders and entrepreneurs and business people that kind of like aren't afraid to buck the system. We call them disruptive leaders. I'm very disruptive. I cause people angst because I'm not afraid of asking tough questions or outworking people.
Oh
Out
yeah.
just
Yeah.
flat out outworking them, and it makes them so uncomfortable.
Well,
And yet, same token, Andrew, that is the only way that the rising tide lifts all boats. You've got to find a way to disrupt the waters to get movement.
yeah, and I remember the first time I heard you speak at Badger Boys. If people heard you speak in there, it's a lot different tone, and you just came at us with this intensity, and every single guy in that gym was just locked in because you just set the tone from the beginning. And I'm not saying this just because you're on the show and we're friends, but your speaking was the most engaging speaking I've heard in my life.
Well, I know, it's interesting because one of the questions that, you had kind of thrown at me is about, are there different ways to lead? And yes, there are. I happen to be a storyteller. I happen to use inspiration. But there's also, and I'm very symbolic. So I like to use vivid images. There's a lot of people though that are just absolutely hard workers and they don't talk very much, but they're some of the best leaders I've been around. I was really fortunate. It's crazy. This summer was really tough for me. I lost, I went through four losses of people. One of the people I lost this summer was my former right hand person back at Carthage. I was at one point in my career, I was an associate athletic director, but I was also the director of our advising center. I wanted to be an athletic director, but I had to take a more non-traditional path, which today I'm so thankful for because I got to see through working in an advising center, I got to see the students in different ways. I got to see a whole nother side of the college that I never saw before. But my right hand man, Ryan, he suffered a very unexpected, medical emergency and died the very last day of Badger Boys State. And it really hit me because that was the first time in my career where I honestly worked with somebody that was so different than I was. And he was a beaver to the max. Like he analyzed and overanalyzed and did all kinds of things. And here I was, Mr. Tell me 2 minutes before I walk in the room what I need to do, and I can woo a crowd and get them to think, But yet, if it wasn't for Ryan behind the scenes, making sure that I could walk in 2 minutes before, it would never have happened. And there wasn't a day that went by that I never appreciated Ryan.
Yeah.
And yet, people would say like, it's like when they say opposites attract, it's truly meaningful because we couldn't have been more different from one another. And yet we respected each other so much. And that was a key. I mean, we would poke fun at each other about, I could remember him being in my office and, always doing a really funny kind of like impression of me standing up there. And, I'm very active when I speak and, and then there would be times where I would, pull out the old movie, Rain Man. And I would be like, oh yeah, Ryan, you remember, all these details about things. And yet deep down there was this real love. And that was something that I really struggled with at times as I was coming through the coaching ranks is this box that men put themselves in, this unwillingness for men to realize you can really love somebody and care and it not be sexual, it not be something where you need something. It's really something you feel and it's a real part of leadership. Leaders feel and give love to the people that are around them, where you feel like you can make mistakes, where you can be authentic to yourself and know that you're not being judged, you're being supported and you're being mentored and guided. And that was hard for me because I am who I am. And there were so many times where I felt in my career I couldn't be me because I had to be this rough, tough football coach who spit and swore. And, and at the end of the day, what did it get me? Nothing got me where it got me was going to Badger Boys every year and giving great speeches about love. It's almost as if I was hiding out who I really was. And
yeah. And then you got this breakout to just,
right.
Explode with everything you've been wanting to say.
Yeah. So I guess I would tell you, Andrew, like, yes, there's different ways to lead, but in the end, you have to be really good at what you do and you have to take care of people and you have to be the best at that. And there's no middle ground anymore. You can't just be one thing or the other. You have to know your stuff. You have to be as good as it gets and be as knowledgeable as it can be in whatever it is you choose to be. And you have to love the people that are around you. because if when you bring your A game all the time, it's really hard for people not to want to be like, I will run through the wall for that person, because that's what it's really supposed to be all about.
Yeah, and I love what you said, how you need to know your stuff because you see so much on social media and different things on the internet of people who are, they're trying to sell some coaching, some mentoring, some leadership, and you do a little research on them, and they haven't ever done that's literally the first thing they're walking into, and it's
Mm-hmm.
and you, you just see through that, and as like an employee, as a teammate, looking at a coach, when you are working with someone who is clearly accomplished and knows what they're doing, you respect them, and then you just you work harder because you trust them that what they're telling you has merit.
Well, there's a really good Sitkin and Lin, I think, and yeah, Sitkin and Lin, Six Domains of Leadership. It's a concept that I've used when I teach leadership a lot of times, and they really give a great pyramid. And one of the key pieces of the base of the pyramid for any leader as they're developing is the first thing is to gain credibility and trust and build community. And the only way you can do that is by what you say and doing what you're saying you're going to do. Period. So many people will walk into a room and they'll want to tell you all the great things they could do, but at the end of the or like you and I were just joking before this about the accolades of people. One of the things I can't stand is when I'm going to speak somewhere, that whenever I speak somewhere or I go do a seminar or I'm consulting, that people stand up there and say all these things about me. It's like I don't want you to talk about me. I just want to get going. Like
Yeah,
I don't really care. Like, and I know it sounds crazy because so many people judge a speaker, but judge me on what comes out of my mouth and my actions. Don't judge me or don't assume that I know what I'm talking about even because of where I've been or what I've done in my career or the fact that I have a PhD. Okay, fine. I mean, yeah, those are important things in life, but judge me at the end. Like, don't worry about my accolades. Get it going, and that's key. And you're right. I mean, I call it the Wizard of Oz leadership syndrome. This whole thing of you're behind the curtain, and the Wizard of Oz stood behind that curtain. He's like, "Oh, I'm the Wizard of Oz," and everybody's scared of the Wizard of Oz, right? But then when you pull the curtain back, it's this kind of like, I don't know. He's just not very intimidating,
yeah.
right? He ended up not being really that big of a deal, and at the end it's like deflating to people because you see it all the time. You do, where you just you get to that point where it, and that's unfortunately a trap of leaders, of many leaders, is but just before they get found out, they hop off to another job, or they kind of leave, or they leave you hanging, or they transfer, they get out of it. And I'm convinced more and more that you are under scrutiny. Leaders are under scrutiny more today than ever before because of social media, because of access to information. There is no reason to fake it. It does you zero good. You will be found out. You can try to intimidate the heck out of people, but at the end of the day, they're going to find you out, and it's better that you play this game of gaining credibility and working hard and getting their trust through your actions than anything your words can say or do.
I want to ask you: do you see, any different trends, any different things you're seeing in young leaders today than say 20 years ago or when you first started?
Hmm. They're savvier. They're like, I used to be able to you kind of would be able to walk in a room and be able to kind of woo them a little bit and talk with them, and they wouldn't, but they, in some ways, I wouldn't tell you could fool them. But they wouldn't do their homework as much. But now you're almost like, they're so much more aware. They ask more critical questions. They want to know why more so than ever before. And part of that's, I think, your ability as a generation to have so much access to information. They want to know why. They want to know where this came from. And so you can't just give a motivational talk anymore and think that they're going to solve the world. I can remember there was a period of time at Badger Boys when I was teaching the leadership school when I got hammered on my evaluations by people because they said, it was really like all this motivational fluff. It was almost like motivational fluff, right? And I was like, dang, like they're right. Like I got to put a little bit more teeth to this. And that was right around the time when I was, growing as an instructor in leadership. And we moved away from doing team building activities because everybody else was kind of doing them. And then I started teaching theories of leadership. And that's kind of when I started in my PhD, where I was like, I really need to know my stuff. Like, I can't just walk in this room anymore and just, tell them a bunch of stories and woo them. I actually I have to have something that really is tangible that they can walk away with and that actually is grounded in theory. And that's one of the hardest things I think about leadership, Andrew, is that from the day you were born, you get this definition of a leader that's so dysfunctional. You think a leader is the kid whose birthday it is, who gets to stand in the front of the line and gets to bring the treats. I mean, you're the leader for the day, and
Yeah.
everyone rotates it around. And we from day one, we think just because you're the teacher, and just because you're the Sunday school leader, just because you're the pastor, we think that, well, you're the leader. Like, and even from, my daughter, she's 9 years old and she gets made captain for the day and she thinks she's the leader and she doesn't know what that means. She has no idea. Like, and I love her and I think they're awesome, but we almost have to, like, I've come to find that in some ways, like in the way I teach, the way I mold, I almost have to break down stereotypes of what people think leadership is and almost like recraft it for them. And then it becomes really disruptive to them because they're like, wait a second, like that's not what I've been taught. And that's not what I know. And that's not what I see every day. And it's hard because they have to go back. And this is what I think is becoming the most difficult thing for me is there are times where I feel like in what I do, I can't reach certain people anymore. There's a certain place in a person's life when they really, the old dog doesn't want to learn a new trick. And so here I have invested 20 years of educating 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds on leadership, and they become more knowledgeable about real leadership than so many other people who have been working longer than they've been alive. And yet here, like you are, a young, vibrant leader, entrepreneur, an amazing, like I love you. I am so proud of you, but yet you're so at the infancy of your leadership. And I'm sure the scrutiny you take from people that are out there is intense because they're like, well, what do you know? You're a kid. Well, I'm going to tell you something. You know a lot and you're really successful and you run circles around people, but there is this myth of leadership that, that you when you get the title and the position and you rise, that you just become more powerful. And power has nothing to do with the position.
Yeah,
It is
there's a big difference between being in
huge.
a position for skill and then actually being a leader.
Absolutely. And I wish people would come to understand that they're just a manager. And it's okay. Like if they would just say, I'm a good manager. Well, you know what? You're right. You are a good manager. You're not a good leader. You're a good manager. And that's okay too. Like there are many times where people, they are just good at managing their craft. They're good at the technical side. They understand what the business needs. But when it comes to putting people and things together, that's when they are absolutely mind blown. And that's leadership is that real crux between the two of them. It's when the Venn diagram connects. It's when people and theories and things come together in an organization where that's where chaos occurs, and that's where problems arise. I tell people all the time, leaders aren't necessary when everything's good. That's what managers are for. When things are rolling, you need a manager. But when stuff hits the fan, that's when a leader needs to step up.
Yeah.
And yet there's so many people who are in leadership roles that hide behind the Wizard of Oz curtain and make Dorothy go and take down the Wicked Witch.
Well,
And that's the real crime.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you. Do you think that's a problem just in, say, corporate America? Is you know, people in higher positions, either promoting someone or putting someone in a higher position because maybe they're skilled technically, but they fail to see, are they a good leader?
The, Part of it, Andrew, comes down to the simple fact that we are great, and I'm going to tell you that I still am learning, but this is one of my areas of growth. This is something that I work on all the time, is being able to have a critical conversation with somebody. And this is tough. This is one of the toughest parts about leadership, is being able to love somebody enough to tell them no, to tell them you are great at this job, but you can't keep going. Like, you got to stay here. And people just struggle with that. So they just push them forward. They move them on. I mean, how many kids did you went to school with that you know darn well didn't deserve to pass the 10th grade or 11th grade, and they just got pushed on? It happens all the time. How many AAU teams exist in the country where if it doesn't work out, I think our own little town here of Springfield, Ohio, where there's three different options for my daughter to play AAU softball at 9 years old. And
Wow.
it's basically because, well, you didn't like the way somebody evaluated your child, so you made your own team. And then they didn't like that, and they spawned off another team. And at the end, all we're doing is we're fooling ourselves, and we're tricking ourselves into thinking that we really are leading people.
And you're putting someone in a place that, they're not excelling at, and you're delaying when they could be, putting their skills and their talents towards something that they really can excel at.
Absolutely. And so gets into this whole notion of grit and resiliency, right? I mean, there's Angela Duckworth's research on grit is amazing. And I hope anyone listening will either get her articles or read her new book on grit, because
I saw that. I was going to get that. That's a book I wanted to read.
Yeah, you love it. First of all, you are gritty. I mean, you're a gritty kid, and you get it, right? You get that and you're willing to put yourself out there, and it's just like anything. Like, there's so many analogies of life that come through. There's great, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And I think about that every day in leadership, right? For every time I do something, it's going to impact somebody. Every time I choose not to do something, it's also an object is at rest will stay at rest until force is acted upon them. Well, you're not going to move unless somebody moves you. And so that's why, whether it's storytelling or inspiring, a leader has to move people. They have to give them a reason to move. And sometimes it's having a critical conversation and saying, you got to move. You can't stay here, and you got to move. And people view that as, again, it goes back to you're being personal. No, I'm not being personal, but at some level, like, the bridge is out, man. Like, you're traveling down the road, the detour signs keep saying turn, and you just keep going, and it's hard, and then, the other side of this, which is so critical, is this whole notion of collision theory, right? I try every day to collide with as many people as possible. Every time you collide, two objects collide, they transfer energy to each other. And you've got to think about that, thinking about those collisions, forced collisions every day. So, for every time you do something, there's going to be a response. Every time you choose not to do something, there's going to be a response. You got to move. Unless if no force acts upon you, you are going to stay still. But every time you do collide, every time you do force, you transfer a little bit of you into that next person. And this is the catch with grit, which is this notion that, when you get forced to move, when energy gets given to you, you give it back. You move with it. You don't get defeated by it. And this is something that I struggle with all the time when I watch people, is their ability to accept pain and to fight through pain. When I think about the kids that work out for us, I get a kick out of things. I'm always really frustrated with hypocritical leadership. Hypocritical leadership is one of my biggest pet peeves. Is when we as a leader expect people that work for us to do something, but we ourselves won't do it. And I catch our coaches in this all the time. Like, you know, think about all the coaches that you probably played for. They would tell you, you got to show up on time for meetings. You got to pay attention. You got to watch your film and do your workouts and blah, 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 you know, go down the laundry list. And I can't tell you the number of times I walk in to start a staff meeting and people come in late. Coaches come in late. They're on their phone. They're not paying attention. They leave early. They have an excuse. And it's like, wait a second. Like, I'm your coach and you're treating me this way. And yet you walk into a room and you expect your kids to do that. And yet you yourself won't walk that line. And to me, that's this whole notion of grit and resiliency. It's like, I'm going to do what's right. I'm going to fight through this. I'm going to be willing to face adversity and battle through it. And it's in the catch with grit, and that this is what it can be taught. And that's where people think, again, it gets back to this whole notion of leadership where they think it's born. You're not born gritty. You become gritty. You work at being gritty. You have reasons to become gritty. And as much as we can say our society is less gritty today than it was, it's because of the way we parented, the way we taught, the way we acted, the way we protected, the way we come up with 10 AAU teams, right? But if we just have and get back to tough, critical conversations at the right age and hold accountability and have expectations, we can reteach this grit.
Yeah, that's one of, just the last few years and going through high school, going through, where I am now, and just you see so much of, not that I'm any expert on parenting or anything like that, but just from, seeing my friends, there were so many times where it would be the parent caring way more about the sport, about, whatever hobby club it is, and, maybe their son or daughter not excelling how much they'd want to, who would get way more upset about it. And, my friends are just gonna be like, I'd rather be doing this, and my parents are just making me do it. And I don't even want to be doing it.
Yeah. And it's funny because I tell her, we were a little fortunate in higher education because once a kid turns 18, they're an adult.
Yeah.
But I tell our parents all the time, I'm like, before you start to open that email and send me something, before you make that phone call, I just want you to call your son or daughter and ask and tell them what you're about to do, because I can't tell you the number of times where, and it's not just parents. It's we live vicariously. We all try to redo life. We try to redo it, and in the catch is we can't. You can't redo it. It's a one-way street. There's no going back. There's no recovery. You got every new day is a challenge, and yet you got to keep moving the train forward. I got to tell you that there are days I sit back and I'm like, gosh, I'm 42 years old. I'm like, the average life expectancy is what now, in the 80s or 90s? I'm like almost halfway there, and I'm like, wow, where did it go? Like where is it going? And yet then I sit there and I feel sorry. You'll feel sorry for yourself, like, oh my gosh. But then I'm like, gosh, I still got halfway to go, and I'm still got so much to go, and I still have so much to learn. And and it's so amazing when it gets back, it almost comes full circle, but that's why these moments are so special for me, because I'm starting to realize that I planted seeds in kids for 20 years that are now just becoming mature trees. And I have not realized it until now. And the sad part is I did it, and I did it disruptively, and I did it unapologetically. And now I see that even though it took me through really difficult times, it got me ostracized from many people for being the way I was and being a caring male leader. I mean, it's just not what people wanted, but yet I knew it's what kids wanted. I knew that deep down this was going to lead me to the right place. And now it's coming to fruition. And I will never, ever, ever be an I told you so kind of person. But if there is anything I could say today, Andrew, that on August 11th of 20, as we're recording this in the year 2016. I'm looking back on 42 years and thinking, man, I was my own entrepreneur of leadership, of a notion that you could lead with love and you could get the best out of people. And now, this is a moment in time, like hearing you, seeing you, watching many of my other students who are now dads and are having their own kids, and seeing some of my former athletes who are able to come out and express their sexuality in a way that they never thought possible, to be, to have a partner that they can call their own, to have people that now are teaching and giving back. I mean, this is what it's all about. And this is why a leader leads. But every one of us has to have our own definition of success. Every one of us has to have our own idea of what the end is going to be, or what the product's going to be. But and for me, I'm just the luckiest guy in the world, because every day I get a chance to completely, it's like almost like a video game. I get to play a video game every day. Like I don't think I'm a Pokemon kind of guy. I don't know if I'm doing that, but like I'm literally getting a chance to help kids write their story, write their path, and hit the reset button and try it over again, and to give them permission to be who they really want to be. And there's no greater feeling, but it's also extremely humbling when you think about how much people your age, kids that are in high school and college, are thirsting for somebody who loves them and cares for them and will accept them and help, and yet at the same token will push them to be something that they never thought they were possible.
I think I speak for all our listeners when they hear this. That was incredibly powerful. And, I had some smaller questions that you pretty much touched on the whole way. And I kind of just want to wrap up with that, because that was really, just kind of one of the best things I've ever heard in my life. So I thank you for that. And to finish off the podcast, I want to ask you one more question that we ask every guest on the show. And that is, what is the one thing you challenge our listeners to change or do in their lives to become a champion?
Well, I knew you were going to ask me this question, and I knew I was struggling, because I was thinking, like, how do I summarize everything into one thing? And then I realized it was you bring your A game every time, every chance you get, and don't just bring your A game to go from A to B. Bring your A game to get better. So anyone can get from A to B, but who really makes it? Who are those champions? They believe that everything they do, they bring their A game to get better, to go from A to better, not just from A to B, not just putting in time, not just punching a clock, not just going in the weight room and putting in a couple hours just because you're supposed to. It's, I'm going to get better today. When I go for a run and I think, like, gosh, I'm 42 and I'm fat and bald, and what am I doing? I'm like, but I'm out there plodding away, and I'm like, I'm trying to get better. And I get in the office and I make a mistake in a relationship with a staff member. I do something and I'm like, I got to find a way to get better. And I just challenge every single one of you that's out there, that you want to be and consider yourself a champion, aka the best at what you do. Then don't just go from A to B. Bring your A game to get better.
That is great. Great answer. And where can our listeners find you, any of your work, your speeches, anywhere on social media that you want to let our listeners know about?
Yes. So I am, every morning I post on Instagram, and my Instagram is Witt, WITT _AD_GW. Every morning on Instagram, I post a message for the day, and I try. I don't invent any of them because I'm not into this. I believe that there's so much out there, and it's just about bringing it into people's lives. So on Instagram, I post something every day, and then I just urge each person that's out there, if you want to follow what I do, I try through the use of pictures and stories to show all the different things that I do. And then I'm also on Twitter, although I don't, I try to. I'm a more of a storyteller, so Twitter's a little bit better for me, but or I mean, Instagram's a little bit better for me. I'm not a Snapchatty guy. I don't know what the heck all that is. That one's vital for me. But I really I try as much as I can uh, to to use. And this is a thing I would, this is a podcast in of itself, but to use social media in a positive way. I think one of the greatest things about your generation, Andrew, is your ability to connect with people and to not lose touch. And so there's so many people that have given those doom and gloom story speeches about, what you post on will be there for the rest of your life. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think you could tell a great story through social media about yourself. And so I try really hard to every morning to send out a positive message for people to think about. It's amazing. I can't tell you the number of times where people will send me a quick message and say, wow, like that message really spoke to me today. And, it's interesting because, again, these aren't my words. They're somebody else's words, but they're powerful when it comes from somebody you respect, right? And so I try as hard as I can to scour around and find messages. This week happens to kind of be the Winnie the Pooh week. So
I've
I've
seen
been,
that. I love them.
yeah, I've been sending out some things because I think there's a lot of merit into looking back into our childhoods and thinking about these sources of inspiration that maybe we took for granted at the time. But yeah, this has been the Winnie the Pooh week, and some weeks I have a theme that I kind of try to surround myself with. But I'm not this. I intentionally steal from great people. I mean, that's what it's there for, and so I'm not trying to fool the world with some like magical messages, but I just try really hard to put out some really positive words every morning that gives me a chance to really think about what am I thinking about today? What's just like you talk about your health, your wellness, what you feed your body when you're working out and stuff. Well, what are you feeding your mind? And I think about that all the time. And so I try when I go to bed at night, I try to read a little bit and feed my mind with some things. And then when I get up in the morning, the first thing I do is I think about, okay, this is what I'm going to think about today. And I send it out there, and my life's an open book in that way. So that's another catch of leadership, right? I mean, that it's a little bit of a, I don't know. I struggle with the word transparency because I think that it's kind of gotten in vogue, and it's kind of one of those things when you talk about transparent leadership, but it's true though, in that you need to be an open book. And so I put it out there, and if I'm not living it, I hope someone calls me on it, and says, but that's why I do it, because I think it's important for people to see who the real you is.
Absolutely. And I can tell you, you are doing it. I cannot thank you enough for being on the show today.
Well, thank you. I mean this. I mean, you're, I'm not, this isn't about either of us really. It's about everybody else that's out there. But this is such a great story for me, of the fruits of the labor of leadership, and seeing somebody who, here you are interviewing me for your podcast. I mean, jumping jeepers. I mean, when I met you as a 17-year-old kid, I never imagined that I'd be doing this. And yet this is why you got to do it, because you just don't know, where the seed's going to scatter. And sometimes it lands, there's that biblical story where Jesus talks about scattering seed, and sometimes it lands on rock, and sometimes it lands in soil. But it doesn't matter. You just got to keep doing it, and you don't know where it's going to land. And when it lands, that's when it grows. And it's so fun to watch you continue to grow. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'm so thankful that you have allowed me a chance to be in your life and to spend some time with you tonight.
Seriously, it's It's an honor. I love you so much, and it's people like you who just make this world, a great place.
Well, I hope so, because sure sure there's some difficult times out there as a leader, and I think all good leaders go through really really rough times, and and I'm not immune to those. I make huge mistakes sometimes, and I do stupid things, and oof. But you just hope that in the end, I hope when I look back on all this that that I remember that that I did what I said I was going to do, and I brought my A game, and I made people better, and in the end, it's all you can do is share, because what good does it do to hold on to it? I mean, for what? What good does it do to hoard your skills and your talents when it's really meant to be shared? It's meant to be given, and I just like I said, just so thankful that I get these chances to do this and to be one of 450 Division III athletic directors in the country. What an unbelievable honor to be at a school and to lead our kids, and to have an opportunity to make a profound impact in people's lives every day. It's amazing.
Well, you've made more than a profound impact on mine, and I can never thank you enough for that.
Well, thanks, buddy. Thanks again for everything that you do.
And that was my interview with Dr. Gary Williams. Like I said, that was a very special interview for me. And every time I talked with Dr. Williams, it just makes me realize how fortunate I am to have a mentor like him in my life. I mean, you can just hear the passion, the love in every single word he speaks. Surrounding yourself with people like Dr. Williams is not only essential for your development professionally, but much more importantly as a person. Just being around someone like this, that's what makes life meaningful. That's what it's all about when it comes down to it. And it's my hope by doing these podcast shows that I can recreate this, even in the slightest, and share it with you and help you in any way I can. So you can find all the show notes and resources discussed today, including where to find all of Dr. Williams' work, at www.firstfinisher.com, and head over to the podcast page. Don't forget to subscribe to the Champions Mindset podcast on iTunes. If you enjoyed the show, please head over to our podcast page and leave a 5-star review on iTunes. These reviews really help our show getting noticed and help us to spread our message. You can also follow First Finisher on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to receive all the latest updates from the show and to join the community of other Champions Mindset podcast listeners. Thank you so much for listening. I wish you the best in your pursuit of becoming a champion.